Today I'm going to show you. Wait a minute. Where am I? Huh. Today I'm going to show you how to make a self-refueling furnace using dried kelp. So essentially this build is split into three parts. You have the automatic kelp farm, then you have the refueling machine, and then you have the auto smelter that all the fuel gets fed into. So first let's get started with the kelp farm. Alright, so this part is pretty simple. So let's go ahead and build up a bit. So this part is pretty simple. We want all of the kelp to feed into this hopper here. So we're going to build out 8 blocks on each side of it. And then we're going to place a row of sand 1 block up. Now our kelp is going to sit on top of the stand, but first we got to encase it. By the way, I'm using glass here just so it's easier to see from the outside for the tutorial. But I recommend for the encasing just using like cobblestone or something. That way you can break it and replace it without having to worry about, losing the block like you do with glass. And also you can't place ladders on glass, which is going to be a problem that I run into in a second. All right, now that we've got the encasing, don't worry about this part right here. We'll get to that in a second. That's where the redstone is going to go. And now we want to place a bucket of water on each end so that when the kelp drops into it, it'll flow all into this hopper. And then we're going to be placing water along this column or this row right here. But we don't want it flowing over here because that's going to screw things up. So we're going to place some ladders to make sure that that doesn't happen. And you can't place ladder on glass. All right, so we're going to place signs instead. But if you weren't using glass, then you could have just used ladders. Signs or ladders work. Ladders are less material, and you don't have to go into this little typing thing every time. So yeah, I would recommend using ladders. Matter of fact, I'm going to replace this wall and use ladders actually. Alright, now these will be treated like air blocks. And before we go ahead and place the water, we are going to place the redstone. Alright, we're going to place the pistons 1 block above the sand. Or I guess that would be 2 blocks above the sand. But, as I'm doing right now. A whole row of them. It's a lot of pistons. It's a decent amount of iron, but it's worth it. And then we're going to place a non-invisible block behind it, just something that redstone can power, like cobblestone or dirt or whatever, something cheap. Place the redstone dust along it, and then place the observers above the pistons, and make sure that the observers are facing in towards the farm. And so now once the kelp grows to this 3rd block here, the pistons will fire and it will cut off the 2nd block and the 3rd block and push them into the water here. Alright, now the machine is set, so we can go ahead and start placing the water. Let me seal this back up. And now we can place the kelp along here. And now it's set. Let's go ahead and make sure that we're not missing our blocks here. So now the first part is done. The kelp farm is done. So after a while, the kelp will grow. It'll get cultivated, and it'll all start piling up into this hopper, which we are going to feed into the self-refueler. All right, now let's go ahead and get into the self-refueler. So the goal of this part is to take the kelp, dry it out, aka smelt it, make it into a dried kelp block, and then feed it back in um, to essentially refuel the drying. So we're going to use dried kelp to make dried kelp. All right, so we want this kelp to feed into a smoker. So we're going to go 2 blocks down from the hopper, place another hopper to connect them. Damn it. That's why I shouldn't play on my laptop. All right. So now the kelp is going to feed into the smoker. And then we want the output from the smoker to feed into a crafter. We're going to make sure the crafter spits out this way. So I have the mouth facing um, to the right of the smoker when you're looking at the front. And then we got a hopper feeding into it. So once the kelp dries, it'll go into the hopper, it'll flow into this crafter. And then once the crafter slots get filled up, it'll craft it into a dried kelp block. And it'll spit the dried kelp out over here where we will feed it into a dropper. Make sure the dropper is facing up. And then, hey guys, editing A-Laz again. So I'm about to place a hopper going into the smoker. This is actually supposed to be a dropper, and I'm gonna fix that later in the video, but for it's not gonna be for a bit. So just note that this hopper that I'm about to place facing into the smoker should be a dropper. That's gonna feed into these 2 hoppers here, which are gonna feed into the side of the smoker and put the dried kelp blocks into the fuel slot rather than the ingredient slot. But we don't want all of our dried kelp blocks going back into here because then we don't have any to use as fuel for what we actually want to smelt. So we gotta take it out with yet another hopper. But we also don't want to take all of it out because then we won't have any dried kelp blocks to make more dried kelp. So now we got to use some comparators and some redstone science to essentially cap how much dried kelp blocks are going to be stored inside this hopper. So we're going to have a comparator. So we're going to have a comparator reading this hopper up here. So this has to be glass. This has to be an invisible block. So we're going to run a Redstone Torch underneath it. Then we're going to have some Redstone Dust leading out from that torch. And it's going to go ahead and power this block, which is going to power this hopper. So as you can see, if we put the redstone here, this brings out a signal of 1, but we don't want it to just we don't want this to turn on, or we don't want this redstone torch to turn off every time that there's an item in here, because we need to have a backstock to actually, like, you know, have a decent amount of fuel to smelt the new kelp. So we're going to have it do a redstone signal of 2, which will require about 42 or 43 items inside this hopper. So that means that once this hopper hits 42 or 43 dried kelp blocks, the comparator will put out a signal of 2, which will turn off this redstone torch, and we'll stop powering this, and then this hopper will start taking some of the dried kelp blocks out of there. Then once it dips back under, 42 or 43, all that entire process will reverse, and this will stop taking dry kelp out. And now the only thing left to do is to go ahead and power these guys, because at the current moment, whenever they get the dried kelp, it's just going to sit in here. So we actually need to power it, and to do that, we're just going to go ahead and make a redstone clock. Any redstone clock will do. I'm just going to make a really compact one that doesn't really make a lot of noise. Alright, so this is a very compact clock. We have the two hoppers here, which are feeding into each other. So if we drop an item into it, it will just flow back and forth between them, which will power on and off this comparator, which is reading from this hopper. And we want that to flow into this dropper so that it will power both the dropper and the crafter. If you want to learn how to make different redstone clocks, you can go ahead and check out my video on that. Little self-plug right there. But the last thing that we need to do is to make sure that this hopper doesn't put too many dried kelp blocks into here, because one dried kelp block can smelt 20 items, but it requires 9 dried kelp to make. So we don't want to use too much dried kelp to where if there's only like 4 kelp in here, that it'll use a whole block to smelt it, because that's just going to be some negative returns. So we want to make sure that it only dispenses one at a time. Oh, I'm good. Oh, I'm good. Yeah, so make sure the dropper faces into the smoker. All right, and so in order to get a read on how many items are in the fuel slot right here, we are going to have yet another comparator come out. We are going to have the comparator come out of here, and we're going to feed some redstone dust out of it. And it's important that we use invisible blocks over these hoppers, so we don't want to interfere with the redstone signals there. We're going to have some redstone dust coming up over there, and you don't really need to use an invisible block for this block right here. I'm just going to do it to be safe. And then we're going to feed 2 redstone repeaters right here. And to finish it off, you're just going to go ahead and put a piece of redstone dust on top of this dropper. So when 28 items are found inside the smoker, the redstone signal will reach up here. It'll power the dropper, which dispenses a kelp block into the fuel slot. Now, this will also inadvertently power this hopper, which will make it stop taking items. But once the ingredients get back under 28, like so, it'll power back off and start taking items again. And so there you have it. There is your self-refueler, and now we just feed it into an actual furnace. And then we can go ahead and feed this into an actual furnace. So feed this fuel into this furnace, and let's say we just had so many dried kelp blocks, just so many. It's flowing, it's going into this furnace. Oh, we have so much fuel. Yeah, and then you can go ahead and make a auto smelter out of that, like so. And we'll put some items in here that we want to get smelted. So we got a bunch of iron ore. Let's put the iron ore up here. It'll flow down, start getting smelted. And yeah, there you go. You now have infinite fuel for your furnace. You don't need to go out and mine coal or grab all the kelp by yourself. This just keep filling up while you're around your base, and you don't have to worry about it anymore. And there you have it. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys have anything that you would like me to build, redstone wise, of course. If you guys have anything you would like me to make and show you guys how to make, go ahead and leave it in the comment section down below. If you guys have any questions on how this works or how to fix it if it breaks for you, again, let me know in the comment section. If you enjoyed, if this was helpful, like the video and subscribe so I can.